sure that they actually follow through and they follow through in a reasonable amount of time.
But the band was an important step towards the Wilmington she dreams of.
I'm so proud of all the community members.
Welcome to the Author's Edge radio show with Gael Freer and Bob Price. Now, their show airs nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network, Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. Each week on their show, they help authors create books that transform our lives and imaginations. Through radio excellence, they create a unique community resource, one that promotes, connects, and fosters a sense of well-being. Gael and Bob maintain a focus on sharing books, publishing, marketing, and writing solutions. They serve listeners by providing outlets for their creative skills and energies, and they help them flourish in the competitive marketplace. Their weekly show provides intros, writing spotlights, helps you in promoting your book, your writing, your publishing, your marketing tidbits, and much more. Okay, audience, here's Gael and Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Gael.
How are you today?
I'm great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Peachy?
Peachy?
Yeah. Are you peachy?
Is the guy peachy?
I don't know. Can guys be peachy?
No, guys can't be peachy.
What can guys? Never mind.
Never mind.
Okay, today we have Kent Sanders with us, is the founder of Inkwell Ghostwriting, which helps leaders grow their businesses through books and other content. He is also the author and co-author of numerous books, including 18 Words to Live By, A Father's Wisdom on What Matters Most, and co-author of The Faith of Elvis, a story only a brother can tell, with Billy Stanley, Elvis's stepbrother. Welcome to Author's Edge.
Thank you so much, Gael and Bob. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I used to say that in class all the time. My students, to this day, when I walk into Walmart and they see me, they'll say, "Go ahead." What exactly is ghostwriting?
Ghostwriting basically is, sometimes I use two metaphors for what ghostwriting is. One metaphor that I like to use is that ghostwriting is kind of like being a mouthpiece for somebody. You know how sometimes, let's say a president has somebody who is his spokesperson.
Mm-hmm.
They go out like a press secretary.
Mm-hmm.
They go out and they speak on behalf of the president. They are basically answering questions, not as the president, but they are speaking on their behalf. So a ghostwriter basically is writing on behalf of somebody else. So somebody, let's say if they don't have the time or the writing skill or the interest in taking hundreds of hours or years of their life in writing their own book or writing their own story, then that's where a ghostwriter comes in to help them to express their story, their unique point of view. Maybe they have a framework for business or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really good because particularly if you're a leader or if you're a business owner, you have a lot better things to do with your time than trying to struggle through writing a book. So that's where a ghostwriter can be helpful. Another metaphor that I like to use for ghostwriting is, and this is kind of a strange one, but it's the best one I can think of. It's kind of like being a midwife, where you are there to help. So somebody has a story, or they have something important to deliver to somebody else. And a midwife is there to help deliver that baby safely and securely, to help be a comfort. They clean up the baby and they give it back to the mom. That's really what a ghostwriter does. We take your messy story, your messy content, your ideas, your wisdom, your legacy, whatever it is. We clean it up. We package it all nice and neat in the form of a fantastic book. We give it back to you so that you can build your business, tell your story, whatever goals are important to you.
How did you get into the business of ghostwriting? How did you start this?
It's a very interesting question. And the interesting thing is that if you talk to any ghostwriters, almost 100% of them will say that they stumbled into it, because nobody really sets out to become a ghostwriter. It's just something we kind of fall into. So for me, my story was I was actually a pastor in my 20s. I always wanted to be a pastor. That's what I had a very strong calling in life to do. I went and did that for a while in my 20s. Then I became a college professor for 17 years. I taught at a small school in North St. Louis. Really enjoyed that. But I saw where the higher education industry was going about 7 or 8 years ago. So I thought, I've got to have a plan B. I've got to have another plan here. Otherwise, I'm going to be, when our school
Unemployed.
probably closes, I'm going to be digging ditches or delivering for Amazon or working at Hardee's or whatever it is. So I've got to come up with a plan B. Not that there's anything wrong with those jobs. I just don't want to do those. So I began to actually do freelance writing. So things like writing podcast show notes for people, writing articles, those kinds of things. And then eventually that led into fully ghostwriting books. And I loved that because to me, ghostwriting, one of the interesting things about ghostwriting, other than the fact that I think I'm really good at it, it's a skill that I have. Other than that, it's something that I can really easily explain to people. So when people say, Kent, what do you do? I say, well, my main gig is I'm a ghostwriter, which means if you don't have the time or the skill to write your own book, to tell your story or promote your business, that's where I come in. I shape the words. I help you think about the marketing and how we're going to position it in the marketplace and how we're going to tell that story. And I come in and I make your life a lot easier by taking care of that for you.
Now, is ghostwriting the same thing as co-authoring? Or is that a different?
Do you do any co-authoring, or is
I
it
do.
strictly okay?
Oh,
I do.
But I want to know.
There's kind of a
I want to
range.
know if there's a difference between co-authoring and ghostwriting. Is there?
That's a really great question. It really depends on the situation. Ghostwriting can range all the way from straight up co-authoring with somebody where you get credit on the cover of the book. For example, with the book, The Faith of Elvis, that you mentioned in the intro, that was a ghostwriting deal, but it was kind of a co-author deal because I negotiated to have my name on the cover of that book, which does happen sometimes. So ghostwriting can range all the way from you're really collaborating with somebody closely on a book where you both are digging into the words, you're shaping the story, you're planning the book together. It can go from that all the way to the other extreme, which is somebody says, hey, can you write a book on XYZ topic? And you say, sure. They give you a few ideas and you deliver a finished book to them.
Okay, so when you do something like that, does your name appear on the book, or is it the like who gets the credit?
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It all really depends on what you negotiate in the contract.
Okay.
So there's really no hard and fast rule to it. It all depends on kind of what you want to do in your career as a ghostwriter and what you negotiate with the authors. And honestly, having your name on a book can be great, but it's kind of overrated because people typically who are happy with your work as a ghostwriter, they tell everybody about it. And it's kind of like the best marketing. So it doesn't really matter if your name is on the book that much.
Right. So what's the price range on that?
Well, like a lot of things, I'll give you the attorney answer is it depends. So for example, let's take like two extremes. So at the very, very low end are beginning ghostwriters who are going to charge about $15,000 for a book or sometimes lower. $15,000 is really like the very bottom end for professional ghostwriting. Now you go to the other extreme. Let's say Prince Harry's book just came out a few weeks ago. So nobody really probably knows for sure except the accountants and the publisher.
And Meghan.
And Meghan, how much the ghostwriter really got paid for that. But the rumor is he got a 7-figure deal.
Oh my!
Which is not unusual for a major celebrity book. That's not unusual at all. Most ghostwriters tend to fall in the range between $50,000 and $75,000 for a fully written book. That includes all the interviews, the editing, the whole kit and caboodle. I talked to a guy yesterday. He's a new friend of mine. He charges $125,000 for a book, which is really not unusual either for a really, really high-level ghostwriter. Got a lot of friends who are in the $20,000 to $30,000 range.
Well, yeah.
So that kind of gives you an idea of
if you
where it
write
could be.
a book a year, which is,
That's really easy.
yeah, $125,000 is a salary.
Mhm.
It's
I gave my services away.
yes, you did. What can I tell you?
but I have two. In fact, they're kind of a principle that I have in my business is I'm always working on some kind of pro bono project. For example,
I have your next pro bono person.
Okay. I just feel like that's an important thing for me to do in my business is give back in different ways. And I'm super selective about it, obviously, because it's really time consuming. But one of the main pro bono project I'm doing right now is for an old friend of mine. Used to be a college professor. Now he's a pastor. And he wouldn't have the funds to hire a ghostwriter, but we've kind of collaborated on his book. It hasn't really been straight up ghostwriting. It's really been more like heavy editing and book project management, those kinds of things. So it just depends on the
You might
situation.
become a co-author on it.
Probably not, because I didn't really write any of it, but I've heavily
Okay.
edited it.
Okay.
I've done everything else in the book pretty much.
What type of books do you do, or is there topics that you
More
really
passionate
focus
about?
on? Yeah, or more passionate about?
That's a good question. So I discovered something when I did the Faith of Elvis book a couple years ago. Actually, that came out last year, but we started working on it a couple years ago, so it all kind of runs together. I discovered that I really, really like writing memoir. That book was an absolute blast to work on. Collaborating with Billy, Elvis's stepbrother, he's an amazing human being. He was so easy and fun to work with. It was a blast. I discovered that I really like writing those kinds of books. So I'm leaning more toward memoir, or sometimes what's called inspirational memoir, which is where you take somebody's story and you're kind of drawing out principles and teaching elements from that.
Mhm.
So it's not just a story. You're trying to help the reader to
Give a message.
give a message of some kind. Yeah.
Mhm.
How did you run across Billy?
That's a funny story. So it was really just all through connections. So to give you kind of if I backtrack how that actually happened. So agents are the ones who really make book deals happen, literary agents. So a friend of mine who is an author, she connected me with a friend of hers who's a ghostwriter, who then connected me with a friend of hers who is a literary agent. We worked together I did a little bit of work on one of her client books, but that project fell apart, which is not really unusual. Sometimes it happens, just like movie deals. But then she called a few weeks later and said, "Hey, I've got this other project that has a pretty urgent timeline. The publisher needs it by the end of January. So this is the middle of November, basically. Can you do this book in about 10 to 12 weeks?"
Wow.
Whoa.
And that was the Elvis book. And there was a lot of circumstances around it because why they needed a fast turnaround time. And so I probably shouldn't say this on air, but I actually considered not doing that project because it had such a tight timeline.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was working on several other books concurrently. But I told my wife about it, and she said, "You're an idiot if you turn down this opportunity to work with
Absolutely.
Elvis's brother." And I was like, "Of course you're right. You're always right." And so I did it.
Wives are always right.
She's always right. I've learned not to argue with her.
Yeah, my husband has too. Yeah.
I'm not going to ask if that's true. We'll just assume that's the case.
So you got to writing the book. Now, how was it working with him?
It was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. Billy is the best kind of client in that he's, number one, really pleasant. Number two, really flexible. So he could basically talk and do calls anytime, which was great. He's a wonderful storyteller, which made my job 1,000 times easier because he's been telling stories about growing up with Elvis for decades, literally. He was part of Elvis's entourage as a kid. He knew him on a
What's the age difference between the two?
Elvis, if I'm not mistaken, Elvis was, I think, 24 whenever Billy and when his brothers and his mother came to live at Graceland, because Billy's mother married Elvis's dad, Vernon.
Mm-hmm.
So they had actually met in Germany. So Billy was 6 at the time. So I think there was like a 17 or 18 year difference, something
Okay.
like that.
Okay, so that's
I could be
sizable.
off a little bit, but that's roughly.
Right,
correct.
right.
So, what is the process like working as a ghostwriter? In other words, I guess there's many different aspects or different from the way different books are, but what is normally a process that you work with somebody?
That's a really good question. The funny thing about it is that whenever I start to work with someone as a ghostwriter, they always want to start with the book because they've been thinking about their story or about their book for a long time,
Mhm.
which is totally natural. But I actually set the book aside for a little bit at first. So what we always start with talking about is not the book or the words or the book outline or any of that stuff. But I start by talking about their goals. What is important to them in their life? What do they want to accomplish in the next 5 or 10 years? What are they really shooting for? Why is this book important to them? Once I discover that, then it becomes much easier to position the book. Because the worst mistake that I can make as a ghostwriter or as a collaborator is helping somebody to write the wrong book. Because you can spend a lot of money and a lot of time and emotional energy on a book, but if it doesn't align with your personal or your professional goals, then that's going to take you in a whole different direction, and that's not good. That's actually worse than having no book.
Right.
So I try to get very clear on Why is this book important to you, and why do you want to tell this story? This happened actually just last week. I'm working with a new client. This isn't a ghostwriting thing. It's really more of a coaching and developmental editing kind of a deal. She's doing the writing. I'm doing more of the editing and book coaching and those kinds of things. She had in mind that she wanted to write one book, but then once we got to talking and digging into her story, she really discovered that she needed to tell her own story. Rather than being kind of a professional type of book, it's really more directed toward her story. And so that's why it's important to dig into, what are your goals? What's important to you about this process?
You know what? I
The-
talked about that before. The why.
Exactly.
The why of
It's
what
critical.
you're doing. It is critical because if you don't have a solid why,
Mhm.
you have no direction.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
have no idea how you're going to get to where you want to get.
Yeah.
So you need to have a solid why. And we talked about
Absolutely.
that last time. See, I do know what I'm talking about.
And there have actually been times where I have steered people away from doing books, particularly if I know if hiring me will be a financial hardship for them.
hmm
Just as I try to really be a person of integrity, as we all do.
hmm
And if I know it's going to be a real hardship for somebody, then I try to steer them away from it or steer them toward a different option.
Right. So, just to remind everyone, you're listening to the Author's Edge with Gael Freer and Bob Price, coming to you weekly on Mondays at 3 p.m. on KWRH 92.9 and KXOK 102.9 FM, and Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network. So, Bob, you have some marketing tips?
Well, we were talking about building
A
an
what?
awesome website.
Yeah, we were during break. We were talking about that.
If you're not a technical person, the
And I
mere
am not.
thought of building a website can bring on horror movie chills.
Wow.
But
Horror
the
movie
six steps, choose a hosting provider, choose a domain name, choose a platform.
What's
Whether-
CMS?
Well, it really becomes whether it's WordPress or whether it's
Oh, okay.
a different format.
Mm-hmm.
Choose a template.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5, customize your website look, create the necessary pages, edit your site's look, add to your content, and enjoy your creation.
Do you need to keep up with it? Or is it
Well,
a one and done?
No, it just depends on. I mean, I would tell you to keep up with it
Mhm.
and keep ahead of it, because you constantly want to post something or change things or add books that you've written.
True.
But I'll give you the step-by-step explanations for each of these, showing how you can create a website that will be your writer portfolio, blog, store, or whatever you want it to be. But you have to go to our website, authors-edge.com, and sign in, and you can get this complete 36-page article and have access to 100 plus writing, publishing, and marketing articles.
100 plus?
100 plus.
Wow.
Actually, there'll be about 120.
120. And you put them all on there?
Yes, I did.
You are the IT person.
You just sign up and subscribe there first, and you have free access to that.
Excellent. Excellent. So we are chatting with Ken Sanders. In addition to writing books for himself and his clients, Kent loves to help other writers. He's the host of the Daily Writer podcast and the founder of the Daily Writer Club, a membership community that helps writers build a business with their skills. So what inspired you to start the podcast?
I've
And the club?
always loved podcasting. I've been podcasting for about 10 years.
Oh, this is my
Oh,
first
wow.
go round.
Is it?
Yes, and
Wow.
I love it. Well, I love to talk.
the radio show is, I mean, the podcast is a little different, but it's where they have a lot of similarities, really.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And
And I love to talk. So, but this is
you're
fun.
kidding.
This is so much fun. I've been having such a great time with this. So tell us more about the podcasting thing.
So I started podcasting about 10 years ago, and I did it just because I listened to a lot of podcasts and I wanted to interview people. One of the cool things about doing podcast, if you have the kind of show where you do interviews, is that you get to connect with people, just like we're doing here. Now, this is actually a rare treat because I don't do in-person interviews very often. It's mostly on Zoom or online or
Mhm.
whatever. So,
Well, yeah.
so this is really, really fun.
That's what I like about it. I'm not a big fan of somebody calling in, because you don't make that human connection. You don't look the person in
Right.
the eye.
Right.
And I think that is such an important
important.
thing. It is. It really is.
It is.
And I think it makes a big difference in the dynamics
It
of what
does.
goes on in that podcast or that interview or whatever.
It really does.
Yeah,
A
I
thought,
agree.
thought that I had was, well, how do you work with your clients? Is it all by phone, or is it by Zoom, or some other medium?
So far, it's been by Zoom or phone. It can really be either one, but my job is to adjust to however the client likes to work.
Mhm.
For example, if they like to do Zoom calls, we can do that. If they like to talk on the phone, then I just record those calls and then I use those as the basis for the book. But I have one client, actually, one of the great things I love, just as a side note about ghostwriting, is I feel like I learn something from everybody that I work with,
Mhm.
which is one of the great things about doing any kind of client work. It's not just a one-sided thing where you're doing a service for somebody and you're getting compensated and you're kind of done. No, I love doing ghostwriting because every book that I do, I feel like I'm getting a master's degree in whatever that story is or whatever that topic is. So it's really, really a lot of fun. So I have one client, we're writing a business book together, and he travels a lot. He couldn't do regularly scheduled phone calls. So I said, well, what if you just make voice notes? You just record voice notes, you send those to me, and it's really the same as a phone call. I'll give you prompts that you can talk about on the plane or when you're traveling or whatever. And it's basically the same thing. And so we got into this rhythm of doing that. It's actually worked out really well. So that's something I'm now
Wow.
offering clients is just,
Okay.
if you don't want to get on calls, I'll just send you prompts. You just talk through those if you want to. Take a walk around the block.
Mhm.
And it's really the same thing.
Yeah.
So my job is always to adjust to how the person
Absolutely.
works the best. Because my whole goal as the ghostwriter is to make it easy and fun for them,
Yes.
not to make it difficult and laborious and this big emotional drama thing.
Right.
If I can make it easy and fun, then my job is accomplished.
What's the Daily Writers Club about?
So that is a membership community for people who want to build a business around their writing. And it's a low price thing. It's $47 a month. It is something that people can join, and we do weekly Zoom calls with guest experts. I do some teaching about half the time. We have guest experts come in. We do Q&A sessions, that kind of a thing. And then we also do a writing sprint each week where people can log on to Zoom for 2 hours. And if they want to work on their book and have some dedicated focus time to that, or work on their writing or whatever it is, then they're working with a group to do that. We're not working on each other's stuff, but we hop on Zoom for 10 minutes. We talk about what we're working on, then we get off, and then we just do some focused writing time. So basically, that's what it is.
How do you access that?
So you can go to dailywriterclub.com, and I've got more information there about it.
Okay.
All right.
And the podcast, how do we access that?
You can search for The Daily Writer with Kent Sanders on any podcast app. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, whatever it is. That's actually a daily podcast, which I know sounds kind of crazy that somebody would do a daily show. But I do an interview typically once a week. Then the other 6 days, I do little short episodes. They're about 2 minutes long. And I do those because people want to get in and they want to get out. So my
Right.
job is to give you one little thing to think about every day to help inspire your creativity or help motivate you to do writing.
Wow, that's pretty good.
I really love it. I truly love it.
What do you think is the most important aspect of writing?
Boy, that's a great question. I think discovering your why, as you talked about earlier.
Right.
Figuring out what is your purpose? Why do you want to do this?
Right.
How do you want to impact you and your family? And how do you want to impact your readers? Once you really feel clear on that, I think the rest of it is a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's what even with helping my husband doing his writing, doing the why of why he's doing a particular book, or doing, because he does mostly children's books.
Do you use Zoom when you talk to him?
Actually, there have been moments when I have done Zoom, but that's because I've been to someplace else,
Oh,
and I've been doing a lot of someplace else's. So yeah, no, it's we've been doing a lot of Zoom. I was in Florida. We were in Arizona. I've been all over the place. So, all right. So I think
Well-
we're coming up on a break. We're going to listen to some commercials. Hopefully you'll pay attention to the commercials. Not like last time.
Yes. We're going to pay attention this time.
We're going to pay attention to the commercials this time. So let's go to commercial.
Do you want to become a radio show host, or do you want to create a radio show? Well, Dr. Stan Fine can help you to have your own radio show and put you on 100 cities daily across the U.S. And you can immediately start recording from a live radio studio. As a radio industry veteran, Dr. Stan Fine has 12 years of experience and has produced and hosted over 1,000 radio shows with over 10 million listeners. Dr. Stan Fine knows how to make this happen for you. He's a pro, and he can turn your dreams into a reality. Dr. Stan Fine will help you with everything from learning how to promote your show, develop a host persona, interview techniques, market your show on social media, teach you how to get guests and sponsors, and more. Dr. Stan Fine can put you on the air nationwide daily to 100 cities. If you're interested in making your dream come true, if you want to see how it all works, then give Dr. Stan Fine a call at 314-710-8413. That's 314-710-8413. You've got nothing to lose, and Dr. Stan Fine can help make your nationwide radio dreams come true. If you're looking for a new, informative health and lifestyle show to gain knowledge and inspiration to help guide your journey to think, work, and live more powerfully, then you need to listen to Sage Advice with Melissa. Now, whether you're trying to improve your life from a mental, physical, or spiritual journey, Sage Advice with Melissa Coleman, CEO of Sage Skincare, delivers weekly advice from industry experts to provide you with insightful suggestions to allow you to thrive with a better quality of life. Melissa's mission: to guide you through the uncharted waters of health and wellness and to give you a voice to help improve your life. So be sure to tune in to Melissa on KWRH 92.9 FM every Thursday at 10 a.m. You'll be glad you did.
Hey, listeners, saying thanks to your customers is nice and polite, but expressing your gratitude in memorable and ongoing ways can boost your business. At Promo Experts LLC, we exceed our customers' expectations. For over 20 years, our product knowledge and experience has helped them with their marketing initiatives and trade show graphics. We are happy to put that experience to work for you. Quality products, great customer service, and prices are our number one priority. We work with you to find unique, creative, and new ideas that fit your image and expectations, helping you build strong relationships with your customers. When you select Promo Experts as your marketing partner, we help you to see more than the big picture. For more information about this exciting opportunity, contact Diane Carson, President, at 636-458-5241. That's 636-458-5241. Let Promo Experts help you to move your business brand beyond the bland.
In today's economy, there are more people looking to buy and sell businesses than ever before. When a company owner needs to sell their business, they can't just stick a for sale sign in the window. They need the assistance of a business broker to locate and vet potential buyers. On the other side, buyers rely on the broker to help facilitate the process of evaluating potential businesses and franchises for sale. A Transworld Business Advisor is the solution for both scenarios. Transworld Business Advisors focus on three core concepts: business brokerage, franchise consulting, and franchise development. Transworld has specialized in the sale of business and commercial real estate. Today, Transworld Business Advisors is a global network of brokers offering a turnkey solution for those that want to build a solid business and future for themselves while maintaining a balanced quality of life. With our comprehensive training program, full marketing support, and local field support, you won't have to start from scratch. Our trained experts and members will help you every step of the way. Transworld Business Advisors has 40 plus years of experience, 10,000 plus businesses sold, and 600 plus brokers, 250 offices worldwide. For a free initial consultation, call Charlie Scarlett, business broker, or Billy Rowland, business broker, at 636-400-6100. Again, that's Charlie Scarlett, business broker, or Billy Rowland, business broker, at 636-400-6100.
Many small businesses do not have a marketing manager. In many cases, it is the company owner that drives marketing and sales efforts with the gut instinct to survive. Even when small businesses do have a marketing manager, though, many of them are trying to navigate through the complex sales and marketing landscape with little to no success or budget.
How to Promote Your Business with Limited Money is a general purpose how-to business book written for business owners and marketing professionals by business owners Dr. Stan Fine and Joseph W. Clote. This guide is not intended to be read as a front-to-back chapter book and rather serves as a quick reference guide. Refer to this book as you need specific information and skip around as needed.
Promoting your business with limited money is one challenging feat, but there are unlimited ideas you can apply to achieve objectives you pre-establish. So, put on your marketing hat and let's take action to start showing your prospects the value your business delivers.
A little you need to know about Dr. Stan Fine. During his 60-year career, Dr. Fine has become an authority on sales and marketing business development issues. His presentations have made him much in demand as a speaker and seminar leader. He has taught business development topics at numerous universities across the United States and has conducted over 500 sales and management seminars. Some of Dr. Fine's credentials in corporate America are currently Dr. Fine serves as a co-host of the Your Business radio show on KDORH 92.9 FM in St. Louis and a co-host of Nationwide Daily Radio Show on my Genre Radio Network on the Xeno Media platform. In 100 cities, he is also on a daily TV show on the Valuable TV and the Real TV networks. Go and get a copy of How to Promote Your Business with Limited Money today.
To purchase your copy of How to Promote Your Business with Limited Money, go to It's Your Business website at www.itsyourbusinessradio.com.
Listening to The Author's Edge with Guy L. Freer and Bob Price, coming to you weekly on Mondays at 3 p.m. on KWRH 92.9 and KXOK 102.9 FM AM, and Monday to Friday 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network. And we're listening to Bob and Gael talk to Kent Sanders.
So, Kent, when we were just before the break, we were talking about your daily tip.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your daily tip?
Yeah, so I do a podcast called The Daily Writer, and the format of that show basically is one day a week I do a longer interview, about 45 minutes. And the other 6 days of the show typically are little short daily tips for creativity, inspiration. I talk about all kinds of things, even sometimes like how to declutter your office, because that's an important part of being a writer.
Absolutely. I just did that yesterday. I decluttered my office.
I like mine cluttered.
I know. I've been there.
Oh.
So the daily tip really, it performs a couple of functions on the podcast. One is that, of course, I want to serve readers or listeners and readers because it goes out over email as well as being an audio podcast. But from a writing standpoint and a business standpoint, the podcast, anytime that you hear one of my podcast episodes, basically that's the first draft of material that's going somewhere else, whether it's a book or articles or something I'm using in my membership community or whatever it is. I'm kind of just testing out material. And then one of the great things about a podcast is that you can immediately see your statistics. You can see which episodes people like and which they don't like based on the downloads. And I love that about podcasting because you literally have immediate feedback on what people seem to be liking. So I love it for a whole bunch of reasons.
What did you just give your most recent one?
What was your most recent tip that you gave?
So today's podcast was an episode called 51 Rejections. And I told the story of an author that I really love. His name is Andy Andrews. He writes mostly story and narrative based books where he has a lesson in there for people to learn. And it's really a wonderful way to teach somebody something is through stories. And his first book was called The Traveler's Gift. It came out probably at least 20 years ago or something like that. I'm sure one of your listeners is going to correct me on that probably. But it came out quite a while back. And this was his first book, and he wanted to find a publisher. And he pitched it over 3 years to 51 different publishers. They all said no. Finally, on the 52nd publisher that he submitted it to, they said yes. And so basically that was an episode on persistence and not giving up on your writing dreams and hanging in there. Because if that's what you want, you've got to keep going for it. And eventually you will break through. It's just a matter of, are you going to be persistent?
Yeah. Well, my favorite story about rejection letters is and I'm not even sure where I heard this, but there was somebody that told me what they had done with all of their rejection letters is they made wallpaper out of it, and they put it in their office, and they wallpapered the whole wall with every rejection letter. And I was just like, that is so cool, because then you get to tell them exactly what you think of them. They're good enough for wallpaper. That's
exactly.
It.
Absolutely.
I have a good friend and business coach. Her name is Honoré Corder, and she's a very successful self-published author. She has the phrase that she uses a lot of times. She says, rejection is protection. And that when you're rejected by something, maybe it's a publisher or maybe it's a client that you were hoping to snag or whatever it is, that's the universe's way of protecting you from harm in that way. Because
that's interesting.
Because really, do you want to work with a publisher who doesn't want to work with you? I don't think so.
Right.
So you there's a sense in which you almost want people to say no faster, so you can get to the person who's finally going to say yes.
Absolutely. That's such a positive way of looking at it.
Yeah,
I like that.
You want to work with a publisher who's excited about you. I mean,
right.
Like even in the dating world, like, don't you want to date somebody who wants to be with you?
Right.
You want to marry somebody who wants to be with you. You don't want to be with somebody who doesn't really want to be with you. So
well, wait a minute. I got to rethink this.
Now we're getting into the deep weeds.
Wait a second here.
Yeah. This show's not called The Dating Edge. It's Author's Edge.
Author's Edge, yes. So what inspired you to become a professional writer?
Well, desperation played a huge role in it, to be quite honest with you. And I'm only sort of partly kidding, because I knew as a college professor, I knew that my time in that role was probably limited. We were actually on an annual contract. So every year, whenever April or May came around, our contract went through June. That was our fiscal year. I knew that my contract might not be renewed for the following year. So every year when that came around, I got a little bit nervous. But then it was also a situation where I wasn't really getting any raises. I wasn't making any more income. I've got a kid who's growing up. I just needed more income, and I wanted more freedom in my life and some changes and all the reasons that people go into business for themselves and those kinds of things. So I just thought, okay, what's my main marketable skill? It's writing. So how can I make a career out of that? And I had a lot of friends who were doing it. And so I just thought, well, if they can do it, I probably can too. And for me, what that career looks like, and I'm not saying this is the way it should be for everybody. For me, that looks like a variety of things put together. So client work, which is ghostwriting, or coaching, or developmental editing, but also having my own books out there, having a podcast where I do sponsorships, having a membership community. I do writing retreats. I have products. So I do kind of a range of things. So I have multiple streams of income, and I really like it that way.
That sounds really exciting.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book, 18 Words to Live By, A Father's Wisdom on What Matters Most?
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the chance to talk about this, because this book is really close to my heart. So my son, he turns actually 19 next month. And for his 18th birthday, I thought, what is something I could give him? And this has been almost 2 years ago. I thought, okay, his birthday's coming up next year, his 18th birthday, kind of a landmark birthday.
Oh, yes.
What can I do for him that would be really special? And I thought, well, I'm a writer, so I'll write him a book. Knowing that there's really no 18-year-old who goes, oh my gosh, you wrote me a book, I'm so excited. No 18-year-old probably would ever say that, unless they're really like they really love books and reading. So I really wrote this book with the idea in mind that he would appreciate this when he's 40 or 50 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of us, when we're teenagers, we don't really appreciate the wisdom of our elders or our parents.
Especially our
older.
parents.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I still went about writing the book. And this was basically 18 values that I wanted to make sure to pass along to him in his life.
And any coincidence that it was his 18th birthday?
A total coincidence. I mean, not a coincidence at all. Yes, that was totally intentional. And I purposely, the way that I constructed this book is I wanted to make it a short, fast read. So if you even just look at the actual way this book is laid out, the chapters are very, very short. The physical book is actually small because I think it feels less intimidating. And
So an 18-year-old will pick it up?
so an 18 or 80-year-old or 45-year-old or everything in between. One of the main comments that I've gotten from people who've read this book has been that it's a fast read. And that was one of my main goals. I think a lot of authors don't really keep that in mind whenever they construct their books. You want to create a book that's easy to read, that's fast to read, that's engaging, that has a lot of stories. If you bake those things into it and help the reader to stay interested, you're going to be really serving your reader well.
And they will pass the word along.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So you have I have a quote here. You will lead a successful life based on whether you take responsibility for your own success. More than anything else, take responsibility will account for your happiness and success in every area of your life. And that's on page 16 of your book.
Mhm.
So tell us about that.
Well, that is the number one value that I put in the book. So I started off the book with this concept of responsibility because I think that's ultimately where a meaningful life and any kind of success really starts. Whether it's success in your career or as a parent or in your marriage or with your family or your health or anything else, it starts with embracing the idea that I am responsible. I can't blame anybody else. I am responsible. I have to take initiative to make the changes that I want to see in my life because it's so easy to sit back and just be a victim
Very true.
of everything. And there's so many things that you could blame. I mean, you could blame the president. Doesn't matter who the president is. You can always blame the president or Congress or the economy or your brother-in-law
Or
who's a
COVID.
jerk or COVID or your lack of education or the presence of education. Some people are like, well, I'm overqualified for a job. It doesn't matter. You've got to take responsibility. Do we all have challenges? Yes. Do we all have shortcomings? Yes. But if you take responsibility for your own life and for your own results, that is the most empowering decision I think anybody can ever make.
In chapter 4, you talk about the difference between a scarcity mentality and an abundance mentality. What is that? What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that there are some people who go through life and they assume the pie only has so many slices. For example, and I'll give you a perfect example. I have two friends in the same book-related industry. I don't want to say too many details about it in case they're listening. But these are two friends who do the exact same type of work related to writers. It's a service-based thing they do for writers. One of them has an abundance mentality, so she's not competitive. She's generous. She refers, when somebody's not right for her, she refers those clients to other people. She has clients coming out of her ears. She has more work than she can handle because she's generous. She assumes there's always more than enough work to go around. My other friend, who I love dearly, she's a wonderful friend. She has what I would call a scarcity mentality. She's always worried about the next client's not going to come. She doesn't pay referral fees to people who send her clients. When you talk with her, there's always sort of this nervousness, like she's always kind of trying to pitch herself. And I really hope that this dear friend of mine really comes to understand you just kind of have an abundance mentality. Just relax. There's more than enough out there for all of us.
Right.
It's not that the pie is limited. The pie is unlimited. There's abundance. There's goodness out there.
Absolutely.
If you can just learn to relax and assume that other people are good and want to help you and want to promote you, I think that makes a big difference in how you show up in the world.
Oh, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
In chapter 7, you talk about the need for discretion. Why is that important in our age of social media?
Well, I think it's more important than ever because it's so easy to, particularly on social media, and we all know this, it's so easy to get on there and say something dumb or say something offensive or say something that can wreck your whole career. I mean, my goodness, you can destroy a whole career in one split second. I mean, we've seen it many times in the past 10 years where somebody's old tweets have been dug up or you get on stage at the Oscars and you hit somebody, or you say something on Twitter that cancels your whole show or whatever it is. So
Right.
this idea of maintaining control over your speech and your emotions, I think it's really, really important because it's so easy to kind of get set off. we've all gotten on Facebook or social media, and this goofy person over here says something that kind
Really.
of sets us off, and it's easy to make that sarcastic comment or send that text. But I think if we assume anything that you put in writing digitally can be copied and disseminated and used against you, I think that's kind of a safe way to operate. So I just assume anything that I write in text or email or on social media, if I assume the whole world can see it, then I'm probably going to be safe.
Well, one of the things I've always told my students or my son or whomever is that if grandma can't read it without being offended, then don't do it.
That's a great guideline.
It really is. I mean, if you don't want to offend your grandmother, then don't put it down on paper. Don't send it. Don't mail it.
Yep.
Don't write it. Don't say it. Don't think it.
It'll
That's
come back to
simple.
bite you at some point.
It will. It absolutely will. So yeah, that's always been my advice to kids or anyone really. So if grandma can't read it, don't do it.
In chapter
good
10, you mentioned how you can encourage someone simply by sending a handwritten note.
Mm-hmm.
What is your process for making this simple and effective?
So I love talking about this because it's a subject very close to my heart, but it's so simple and old school that a lot of us miss this in our digital age of communication. So what I do is anytime I have a podcast guest or somebody does something kind for me, or I really look for reasons to send people notes in the mail. So what I do is I have by my desk, literally, envelopes, note cards, stamps. I write a note, 2 or 3 sentences, put it in the envelope, mail it to the person. I keep everybody's address in my address book, so it's really handy. And I just send those out. So, and I do also when I send people referral payments, like if they send me a client, I'm still old school because sometimes I send a check in the mail. I know that's so 1995, but
You've got to mail me more often.
but checks still cash.
They still
can be
do.
deposited. You don't have to pay a fee on those like you do on PayPal. And there's something magical about getting stuff in the mail. So just yesterday, I got
Yes.
2 handwritten cards in the mail. What's the first thing you always open? It's the handwritten cards and
Yeah.
notes. and the
Yes,
packages.
that's absolutely true.
The cool thing is
Absolutely.
that nobody does this anymore. It's also because people don't want to mess with the postage and the envelopes and the stamps and all that jazz. But the people who do mess with it, you immediately stand out from your colleagues. It's like the simplest, most effective thing in the world to do.
I get there's one particular friend that I get handwritten notes from all the time, and she will, if I send her a gift for the baby, she will write me a note, handwritten. Mother's Day. I mean, I'm not her mother, but she sees me a little bit like her mother, and so she will write me a Mother's Day card. All those little. I absolutely.
Mhm.
One of the things that's also that I have a hard time with is that people don't send thank yous.
Yeah.
You send Christmas presents to people or birthday presents or whatever. They don't send you a thank you. They'll maybe text you a thank you. Maybe. But other than that, you don't get a thank you. And you don't want the thank you because you want to be because you want something from them. You want the thank you to be something that comes from their heart.
Yeah.
That they mean that. And when you sit down and you write it out, you mean it. And that's what people want. And yeah, I think writing thank you. That's why I said to you the other day, what was it? I said, where are all the addresses from all the people on our interviews? And you said, I don't know. What did because I wanted to sit down and write a handwritten thank you to all of them.
It also does something to you. I think the act of sitting down and writing a note to somebody, it doesn't even have to be a thank you. It could be,
Right.
hey, I hope you're doing well, or I was thinking about you, or I appreciate you, or whatever it is.
That's a good point.
It really
The
is.
act of doing that, it changes you in the process. So it's not just about hoping to get some emotional result from somebody or whatever. It's the act of giving and generosity and expressing love and affirmation to somebody. That changes you in the process. So if you're having a bad day, man, sit down and write a couple thank you cards.
Absolutely.
That will really change your mindset.
It will.
It'll change your whole day.
It will. And in the process, you're also knowing that you're helping change someone else's world
Right.
as well. It's not just a me, it's an us and a we. And that's something that I think is kind of been put on a back burner, or maybe it's not even on the burner anymore. I have no idea. But I really, I think you're 100% right.
I operate on the principle that everybody is going through a crisis of some kind. You know, we go through life and we have to sort of function in society, and we have to function in our families, and we can't go around, you know, dragging our knuckles all the time and being depressed. But everybody at all times is going through a personal challenge of some kind. And you never really know the effect that simple note card or that simple text or whatever it is can have on people. It can be really, really powerful at just the right.
Yes.
You never know how close some people are just to the edge of just quitting or giving up.
Oh, Robin, the actor that committed suicide, Robin
Williams.
Yes. He had something about being kind to the world because you don't know what that person is going through.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You don't.
I mean,
You
I'm
don't.
paraphrasing it.
Him?
He's of all people. I'm paraphrasing that, but that's something that I see all the time is that, you know, be kind. You don't know what the other person and writing those notes is kindness.
It is.
It really is.
And
It's
we have a
kindness.
real mental health crisis right now that a lot of people struggle with: depression, anxiety, other kinds of things. And you can't tell by just looking at somebody.
No.
So I just assume everybody's going through something. And I think if you assume that,
you can be kind.
it can radically really help somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
And what does
can.
it cost you? 2 minutes and a note card, an envelope, and a stamp?
Right.
In
Right.
chapter 12, you share how you decided to get into ghostwriting as a career, but you also, can you share the story about the 5 criteria you used to whittle down your career path?
Sure. The way that I did this, I approached this very rationally, which I know this is going to sound super anal retentive to a lot of people probably, but there was a day, this was in the summer of, I think it was 2019. I had applied for a lot of different jobs, got rejected by all of them. I had sent a proposal to this client to do a bunch of work for them, and they got turned down flat. I got turned down flat. I was immensely discouraged. And so I thought, okay, I've got to figure this out, or I'm going to be hosed. So I've got to, how do I determine what am I going to choose from? Because if you're going to do online business, or if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to pick a direction. You can't do everything. So I sit down and I thought, okay, rather than trying to just pick something that I thought sounded interesting, let me look at it from the opposite point of view, which is, what are the criteria that are essential that I would have in whatever business that I would build? So I sit down and I thought through it. And for me, it landed on 5 things. I wanted to have time freedom, so I could do it on my own time. I needed to have location freedom, meaning I could do it from anywhere. I wanted to have money freedom, meaning I could make as much money as I wanted in accordance with the value I was delivering for people. I didn't want to have a false cap on it like you do in the academic world or in most other jobs. So that was number 3. Number 4 is it had to put me in touch with highly successful people who are much more financially successful than me, because that way I could learn from them. And then number 5, it had to focus on writing in some form or fashion, because that's my main marketable skill. So when I looked at all those 5 things together, there were really only 2 career paths that I could see. One was copywriting. The other one was ghostwriting. And I chose ghostwriting because I really like books. And as much as I love copywriting, I think it's essential. It's really important. I thought that was harder to explain to people, what that was and the value of it. Ghostwriting to me is very, very simple. You tell people, I write books for people who don't have the time or the talent to do it. And that's basically what it is. So that's really how I landed on ghostwriting. Then I took a course by a friend of mine, got into it, got my first client a few months later, and that's kind of how that happened.
What are the length of the books that you write? I was thinking about that. In other words, are they 75 pages, or may it depend on the stories they have, or is it a 200 or 300 page?
They tend to range from about 140 pages to about 250 or so.
Okay.
So in terms of word count, anywhere from probably 40,000 words to 60,000 is kind of a sweet spot.
Okay.
That could be longer or shorter, but I think it's important not to make a book too long.
Yeah.
You know, you should cut everything that you can out of a book.
Right. So in chapter 16, resilience, you talk about how most people give up their dreams and how can we use these obstacles and problems to our advantage in helping to be more resilient?
Well, I like a phrase that one of my writing heroes, he's a guy named Ryan Holiday. He has a book called The Daily Stoic. He has a very successful podcast in a business called The Daily Stoic, where he helps people implement the principles of the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. It's not really a religious thing.
No, it's
really,
not. It's a philosophy.
It's like a life philosophy that has a lot to do with self-control and taking initiative, those kinds of things.
If I'm not mistaken, Hemingway had a bit of a stoic attitude.
Yeah, I could
about
see
things.
that. Totally.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So he has a wonderful book called The Obstacle is the Way. And I like that philosophy because that's a great way to approach any problem. I think embedded within any problem is the solution to that problem itself. For example, a couple of years ago, I went through a dry spell in my ghostwriting business. Not too long after I got started, and I was like, man, I got a bunch of clients at the beginning. Now I've got this long dry spell. What's going on here? And it dawned on me, and this was, of course, through some mentoring and coaching. I didn't come up with this myself by any stretch. One of my mentors basically said, well, the reason this has happened is because you focused on doing the work and you haven't focused on business development. You haven't focused on building those relationships and touching base with prospective clients and those kinds of things. So I thought, oh, wow, this solution to this problem is great because the problem itself is making me aware of what I need to do in my business. Yeah. So because of that, I started a lot more business development and things improved from there. So I think problems can be wonderful if we're willing to look for the solution embedded within the problem itself.
Okay.
I feel like that's kind of a non-answer.
No.
That was that.
But maybe more of just a philosophical way of looking at it.
That's insightful.
It
because
is.
It's really where if you look at the problem that we face, there is an answer, and it probably is within the question,
right,
Yeah.
or the problem.
Right.
Well, because when I first started doing the, when 2020 came around, that's when I retired from teaching. And at that point, I had decided that I wanted to be in publishing and I wanted to be in all of those things. At first, I had a ton of clients, and then suddenly I had no clients, and it was like, well, what am I doing wrong here? And so I had to kind of go through what you were just talking about. Absolutely, without a doubt. So I want to thank everybody for tuning into Author's Edge. Thank you so much, Kent, for coming by and chatting with us.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Yeah, and actually, there's more questions I have for you, so don't go away.
Sure.
All right. This ends our first season of Author's Edge. We will begin season 2 in June with some very exciting new guests. Michelle Webb wrote Dexter Fetting In, Stepping Through Life, One Paw at a Time, will be with us. Barbara Sotomayor, local writer of Victor's Blessing. Michael Allen with his book, Finishing Well, about your own exit plan and timeline to retirement. And I might even get my mom, Dr. Jacqueline Byrne, about her talked about her memoir of life in France prior and during World War II. I talked to her this weekend and she said, yeah, she'll do it. So we'll see we'll see if this flies. But I think it would be really fun to have her on here.
Yeah, that would be.
Along with many aspiring writers and illustrators, graphic designers, and photographers. Tune in again next season for more tips, resources, and your favorite conversations. Remember, Authors Edge, serving our author community, is broadcast from St. Louis at KXOK. We are your number one source for writing, publishing, and marketing your books. Check us out at authors-edge.com for more tips and ideas. Tune out with us. Until next time, we will see you around the inkwell.
That's 314-745-2512.
I'm Dr. Anthony Lazarus, and this is Climate Connections. Summers in the Phoenix metro area are sweltering.
By June, just about every day is going to be over 100 degrees.
That's Augustine Gastelum of Rail CDC, a community development organization in Mesa, just east of Phoenix. Many locals beat the heat by moving from one air-conditioned space to another. But for folks who walk to work or wait for the bus, the heat is unavoidable, especially in historically underserved neighborhoods, which are often the hottest.
Very little tree cover, very little shade access. The bus stops don't have shade coverings.
In one predominantly Latino area, his group led a series of workshops. Residents shared their experiences of heat and identified solutions that would help them.
A lot of the things that came up in the conversations were really basic.
For example, building shade structures at bus stops, installing sprinklers for kids can cool off, and providing access to drinking water along busy walking routes. But while the solutions may seem simple, Gastelum says it's been a challenge to fund and implement. So as the climate warms and the city gets even hotter, there's a long way to go to protect those who are the most vulnerable. Climate Connections is produced by the Yale Center for Environmental Communication. To hear more stories like this, visit climateconnections.org.
Take KXOK with you wherever you go and listen on the free MyTuner app.